Straight knife initial setup. Once you receive your Eastman straight knife, you will need to open the box, place the machine on a cutting table, open the accessory box, place the knife box, Allen wrench, bearing grease, oil bottle, slot cleaner attachment plug, and sharpening belts on the table. Before you use the machine for the first time, please adhere to the following. Check that the electrical supply current and voltage that the machine is connected to are the same as stamped on its nameplate. Operating this machine from an incorrect electrical supply may damage it. For three-phase machines, also check the direction of rotation so that it's correctly set by the turning knob. Refer to the tag attached to all three-phase machines for detailed instructions. Connect electrical supply to attachment plug. Be sure that supply line is properly sized for current draw and voltage. Place 2 drops of oil just above the sharpener lever. Also, fill the oil reservoir with Eastman oil. Perform this on a daily basis. Place 1 drop of oil in each sharpening tube, pulley shaft, and belt pulley. This should be performed weekly. Remove plug and insert grease tube into the lower gear bracket. Squeeze a small amount of grease into the hole, approximately 1/2 centimeter in diameter. This should also be performed each month to keep your sharpener running at performance. Make sure that the sharpener is in the locked position. To do this, push in the turning knob. While depressing the turning knob, turn the machine over a few revolutions by hand to see if the knife reciprocates easily. If the knife does not move easily, the sharpener may be in the unlocked position. To lock the sharpener in place, lift the release lever and press the sharpener lever to release the sharpener. Raise the sharpener bracket by hand to lock it in place. Once the sharpener is locked in place, you may disengage both the release lever and sharpener lever. Repeat this step to ensure that the sharpener is now locked. Visually inspect the blade to ensure that the top of the knife is flush with the knife lock bolt and that the knife is perpendicular to the base plate. If you need to adjust the alignment of the blade, check to see that the machine is unplugged. Make sure the sharpener is in the locked position. Raise the pressure foot to the top position using the pressure foot lever, which is located next to the machine operating handle. Lay the machine on a table. Press in the turning knob and turn the knife to the bottom position. Insert the T-handle knife bolt wrench and loosen the knife lock bolt. Be sure to set the knife tightly against the knife lock bolt. Hold the bottom of the knife against the back of the slot in the standard and tighten the knife lock bolt. After tightening the knife lock bolt, check to see if the knife runs freely in the standard by rotating the turning knob. Check that the motor switch is in the off position. Then, connect the attachment plug to the terminal block on the machine. Hold the operating handle and turn on the machine. Allow the blade to reach full speed. If the blade is struggling, the sharpener is still not in the locked position. If this is the case, turn off the machine and do the following. With your left hand, straddle the front of the sharpener with fingers and thumb. Press the bell crank release lever to disengage the sharpener mechanism from the motor. With your right hand, hold the operating handle and turn on the motor switch. Allow the motor to gain full speed and then release the release lever. This automatically returns the sharpener to the locked position. Turn the motor on and off a few times before running the machine continuously. This permits the oil to warm up and flow easily into the close-fitting moving parts. Failure to do this may result in damage to your machine. Caring for your straight knife. Remember to unplug the machine before performing maintenance, adjustments, or repairs. To ensure proper operation of your machine, it's recommended that you perform the following procedures. On a daily basis, the machine operator should remove the knife and clean the knife slides with the slot cleaner. To prevent undue accumulation of lint, do not oil the plate rollers. If the rollers stick, remove them from the plate and wash them in cleaning solvent. Twice weekly, use an approved air hose or bellow to blow any lint from around the motor and sharpener. Remember that eye protection must be worn whenever using an air hose or bellow, as failure to do so may result in serious eye or facial injuries. On a weekly basis, remove the cover and clean any lint from around the screw mechanism in the sharpener. If performed on a consistent basis, these preventive maintenance procedures will help you to ensure years of top performance from your quality Eastman product. Should you use your machine around the clock, it is recommended that you perform these procedures more frequently.
Setup procedure and adjustment method. Now let's learn the standard setup procedure and adjustment procedure for the DDL 5550, which is a one needle lock stitch machine. Set the walking foot adjusting link as shown on the screen. Fit the feed drive eccentric cam into the frame, taking care of the correct installing direction. Place the feed regulator mounting base pin into the hole in the feed regulator and tighten the screws, preventing play and extra load. Place the adjusting link fulcrum shaft into the hole in the walking foot adjusting link with its flat section facing the screw in the hole. Adjust the position of the walking foot adjusting link so that a uniform clearance is provided on both sides of the link with respect to the frame. Then tighten the screws. Confirm that there is no play and extra load in the walking foot adjusting link and adjusting link fulcrum shaft components. Align the screw number 1 of the pulley with the flat section on the main shaft. Align the end face of the pulley with the end face of the main shaft and tighten the screws of the pulley in the flat section of the main shaft. Make the large gear and the screw number 1 of the thrust collar face rest on the flat section of the main shaft. Fit this screw of the counterweight into the hole in the main shaft. Fit the main shaft into the frame and the feed drive eccentric cam. Then fit the large gear of the main shaft into the frame with its gear facing the left. Fit the thrust collar into the frame with its polished surface facing the intermediate bushing of the main shaft. Fit the counterweight into the frame, making it face this direction. Place the screw of the counterweight into the screw hole in the main shaft and tighten the screw. Adjust the main shaft components to eliminate play. To adjust, press the thrust collar against the intermediate bushing of the main shaft, pulling the main shaft to the left. Align the screw number 1 of the thrust collar with the flat section on the main shaft and tighten the screw, taking care not to allow play or extra load in the actual direction of the main shaft. Turn the pulley to confirm that it smoothly rotates without play and extra load. Install the counterweight protecting plate in place, pressing the counterweight protecting plate against a crank oiler mount adjusting pin. Attach the needle bearing and the thread take-up lever to the needle bar crank. Put the needle bar crank into the counterweight, making its flat section face the screw number 1 of the counterweight. Tighten the screw in the thread take-up lever, taking care not to allow play and extra load. At this time, confirm that the screw number 1 rests on the flat section of the needle bar crankshaft. Now tighten the screw number 1, and after that, tighten the screw number 2. Attach the thread take-up lever holder to the thread take-up lever. Place the thread take-up crankshaft into the thread take-up lever holder with the flat section on the shaft facing above. Tighten the screw onto the flat section of the thread take-up crankshaft, taking care to prevent play. Put the needle bar guide roller into the groove of the frame. Attach the take-up lever needle bearing to the needle bar crank. Put the needle bar crank rod in place with the lubrication hole in the rod facing inside. Tighten the left turning screw. Place the needle bar connection into the needle bar crank rod and the needle bar guide roller. Make the screw face the right. Attach the needle bar thread guide to the needle bar and put the needle clamping screw in place. Insert the needle bar into the needle bar connection from under the needle bar lower bushing. Turn the pulley to bring the needle bar connection to its lowest position. At this time, align the end face of the needle bar lower bushing with the marker line for the DA number 1 needle engraved on the needle bar when using a DA number 1 needle. When using a DB number 1 needle, align the end face of the needle bar lower bushing with the marker line for the DB number 1 needle engraved on the needle bar. Determine the direction of the needle bar so that the needle clamping screw faces the right-hand side. Tighten the needle bar connection screw. Insert the vertical connecting rod of the knee lifter into the hole in the frame. Then put the knee lifter link in place using a hinge screw. Install the knee lifter link and the horizontal connecting rod of the knee lifter in place using a hinge screw. Place the feed regulating pin spring and the feed regulating pin into the hole in the frame. At this time, be sure to put the spring first into the hole. Now fit the feed regulating pin spring into the hole in the frame. Then place the feed regulating pin also into the hole with its sharp point end facing outside. Install the feed regulator screw in place and attach the feed dial over it. Turn the screw in the feed dial until the top end of the feed regulator screw comes in contact with the section A of the feed regulator. Tighten the screw until it will not go any further against the feed regulator. This makes the stitch length 0. Hold the feed dial by hand and loosen the screw in the feed dial. Turn the feed dial until 0 on its scale is straight up and tighten the screw in the feed dial. Fit the pin of the feed reverse arm into the groove in the feed regulator connecting rod. Holding the feed reversed arm with your fingers, fit the feed reverse arm in the feed reverse shaft in this direction with its V-shaped groove facing upward, taking care not to allow the O-ring to be damaged. Then place the screw of the feed reverse arm in the tapered hole in the feed reverse shaft and tighten the screw. Fit the screw of the reverse feed control lever in the V-shaped groove in the feed reverse shaft. Depress the feed reverse shaft, tighten the screws, taking care not to allow play in the shaft and to prevent an extra load from being applied to the shaft. Confirm that the reverse feed control lever smoothly moves and there is no play in the shaft. Put the reverse feed control lever spring and the adjusting link spring onto the feed spring hook. Insert the upright shaft from under the sewing machine head. Put the pinion to the upright shaft. Align the screw number 1 of the pinion with the flat section on the upright shaft. Pushing up the upright shaft and pressing down the pinion, tighten the screw number 1 first and then the screw number 2. Confirm that there is no play in the upright shaft and that an extra load is not applied to the shaft. Insert the hook driving shaft into the frame. Attach the thrust collar in place with its polished plane facing the hook driving shaft rear bushing. Then attach the pinion to the hook driving shaft. Align the screw number 1 of the pinion with the flat section of the hook driving shaft. Tighten the screw in the hook driving shaft, taking care not to allow play and extra load in the hook driving shaft. Tighten the screw, pressing the thrust collar against the bushing. Align the screw number 1 of the gear with the flat section of the main shaft and temporarily tighten it. Adjust the clearance between the gear and the pinion to 0.05 to 0.1 millimeter by moving the gear. Check the clearance by moving the gear of the upright shaft. Securely tighten the screw in the gear. Move the feed drive eccentric cam to the left or right until it is brought to about the center of the play. Make the pulley run idle and adjust the center of the feed drive eccentric cam. Then temporarily fix the cam at that position. Insert the longer feed rocker shaft into the bearing. Then fit the thrust collar in place with its polished plane facing the feed rocker shaft bushing. Fit the feed rocker shaft into the feed rocker shaft crank. Make the lubrication hole in the feed rocker shaft face downward and fix the shaft in place using the thrust collar while taking care not to allow play and extra load in the shaft. Insert the shorter feed driving shaft into the bearing. Fit the thrust collar in place with its polished surface facing the feed rocker shaft bushing. Insert the feed driving shaft into the rear crank. Make the lubrication hole in the feed driving shaft face downward and fix the shaft in place using the thrust collar while taking care not to allow play and extra load in the shaft. Make the lubrication hole in the feed driving shaft face downward and make the pulley run idle until the pulley starts rotating lightly. Then tighten the screw in the rear crank. Fix the feed dog on the feed bar temporarily. Pass the oil wick through the feed rocker shaft. Attach the feed rocker and the driving shaft crank to the feed rocker shaft and feed driving shaft respectively. Draw out the oil wick from the lubrication hole in the feed rocker shaft crank. Attach the throat plate to the table with screws. Adjust the position of the feed dog so that it is placed in the side-to-side center of the throat plate. To adjust the position of the feed dog, move the driving shaft crank and the feed rocker to the left or right. Make the oil wick face downward and tighten the screw in the feed rocker. Tighten the screw in the driving shaft crank temporarily. Turn the pulley until the feed dog is brought to its highest position. Adjust the height of the feed dog by means of the driving shaft crank so that it is 0.8 millimeter above the throat plate surface when the feed dog is in its highest position. Set the feed dial to its largest value of 4 millimeters. Tighten the screw in the feed rocker shaft crank temporarily. Adjust the longitudinal position of the feed dog by moving the feed bar so that the clearances A and B become equal. Tighten the screw in the feed rocker shaft crank. Insert the needle into the hole in the needle bar until it will go no further. Make the long groove of the needle face exactly to the left. Then tighten the screw. Now the feed timing is adjusted so that the crest of the descending feed dog is flush with the throat plate surface when the top end of the descending needle eyelet is 3 millimeters below the throat plate surface. The feed timing is adjusted by means of the feed drive eccentric cam. First, set the screw number 1 of the gear almost in parallel with the screw number 1 of the feed drive eccentric cam and tighten the screws temporarily. Turn the pulley and make the crest of the feed dog flush with the throat plate surface when the feed dog starts going downward. Then loosen the screws in the feed drive eccentric cam and make the cam free from the main shaft. Turn the pulley so that the top end of the needle eyelet comes down 3 millimeters below the throat plate surface by moving the needle up and down. Tighten the screws in the feed drive eccentric cam. Put the main shaft oil tube into the frame. Fit the impeller into the oil pump. Put the oil pump impeller cover and the lubricating oil pump cover on the oil pump. Attach the plunger, plunger spring and plunger screw in place. Insert the oil tube into the lubrication hole in the hook driving shaft front bushing. Insert the main shaft oil tube into a rubber joint of the oil pump. Insert the other oil tube into another rubber joint of the oil pump. Turn the pulley until the oil pump is fitted into the upright shaft, while inserting the hook driving shaft into the lubricating hole in the hook driving shaft rear bushing. Fix the oil pump with screws. Make the pulley run idle to adjust the position of the oil pump and tighten the screws in the oil pump. Install the oil return tube on the oil pump. Insert the main shaft oil tube into the hole in the intermediate bushing. Raise the needle and fit the hook into the hook driving shaft. Hold the bobbin case by hand to prevent the hook from coming in contact with the needle and lower the needle. Adjust the timing in this way. To adjust, turn the pulley in the normal way and bring the needle to its lowest position. Then align the end face of the needle bar lower bushing with the lower marker line engraved on the needle bar. At this time, the axis of the needle should be aligned with the blade point of the hook. Also, adjust the clearance between the needle and the blade point of the hook to 0.02 to 0.05 millimeter by moving the hook. Then tighten the screw in the hook. Insert the positioning finger into the indented part of the bobbin case with the needle entry groove in the bobbin case facing upward. Then tighten the screw in the bobbin case temporarily. Bring the needle down and move the bobbin case so that the needle enters the bobbin case as far as 1/3 the length of the needle entry groove in the bobbin case. Tighten the screw. Fit the needle bar guide bracket into the groove in the frame. Insert the presser bar into the needle bar guide bracket from above. Install the presser foot by means of a screw. Lower the needle, taking care not to allow the needle to touch the presser foot. Fit the presser guide bar into the presser spring, then insert them into the presser bar. Turn the presser spring regulator until its height is adjusted to 27 to 30 millimeters. Then fix the presser spring regulator at that position by a nut. Fit the presser bar thread guide into the groove located next to the tension controller. Then tighten the two screws. Lower the hand lifter. Lower the needle, taking care so that the needle will not touch the presser foot. Then adjust the position of the presser foot so as to place the needle in the side-to-side center of the groove in the presser foot. Lower the needle bar guide bracket by hand and tighten the screws. Confirm that the clearance of 5 to 5.5 millimeters is provided between the presser foot and the throat plate when raising the hand lifter. Pass the end of the take-up spring through the slit in the tension post socket. The coiled part of the spring is housed in the tension post socket. Turn the tension post clockwise to adjust the take-up spring pressure to approximately 20 to 30 grams. Then tighten the screw in the tension post. Attach two tension discs back to back to the thread tension post. Then add the tension disc holder, tension spring, tension disc stopper, and tension nut in that order. Insert the tension release supporting pin in this way. Press the tension release pin spring against the inserted pin. Insert the tension release pin into the tension post with its round end outside. The tension release pin is passed into the coil spring and install the tension controller assembly on the machine frame. Lower the hand lifter and then move the tension controller assembly to the left or right to adjust the strokes of the pressure bar thread guide and top end of the take-up spring to 6 to 8 millimeters. Adjust the height of the tension controller assembly so that the tension discs start separating from each other when the presser foot ascends 3 to 4 millimeters. Confirm that the tension discs are separate when the hand lifter is raised and that they come in contact with each other when it is lowered. After the adjustment, tighten the screw for the tension post socket. Attach the packing correctly to the side plate and fix them to the machine head. Set the bobbin in the bobbin case. Then place the bobbin case in the hook. Attach the slide plate to the table. Move the arm oil shield for the faceplate to the left or right, taking care so that it will not touch the take-up lever. Then tighten the screw. Attach the faceplate to the machine head. The one-needle lock-stitch machine head is set up in the way as explained. When assembling the components, be sure to check every component assembled for play, extra load, or hindrance of motion immediately after it has been set up. Then proceed to the next assembling step. It is very important for you to actually handle and operate your sewing machine by yourself until you are familiar with the operation of your machine. Practice the assembling procedure until you can smoothly set up your machine.